recognition is feedback, and it can be some of the most powerful feedback you can give someone. We tend to think that the best thing we can do is tell somebody how to fix something that's broken. But actually, the best thing we can do is tell them how to lean into the strengths and the capabilities that they have. The reason why Buckingham and everybody else wrote books on strengths. They are powerful, and they are the most important way that we can change. So we're here today to talk about gratitude by the numbers. And we're going to talk a lot about numbers throughout this presentation. The first number I'm going to talk about is 10 years ago. Kevin mentioned my first book, How Performance Management is Killing Performance and What to Do About It. It came out 10 years ago. At that time, I was terrified I was going to miss this wave. I was going to be too late for this radical reinvention of performance management. As Antoinette says, we're still waiting. And sadly, as we look at the data today, we're seeing that it hasn't changed. We still have only 2% of the Fortune 500 CHROs really believe that their performance management is delivering what it should. And 1 in 5 think it's transparent. So we're continuing to admire this problem, and we're still struggling with how do we move forward. And there's more data here. I'm not going to read it all to you, but we can go through buckets of data, and if I took you back to the data in my book from 10 years ago and we look at this today, it's really not any different. We've made very little progress. There's been very little radical thinking out there. There's some, but not as enough as we'd like to see. So when I speak to a lot of groups, people ask, well, why not? What's getting in the way? Why are we not moving forward? And there are really two key things that tend to block our progress in reimagining creating more modern, more human-centered approaches to performance. And it's these two things, feedback and rewards. And you might be saying, Tamra, I thought we were going to talk about gratitude. Well, we are going to talk about gratitude, but we're going to get there through this link of performance to feedback and rewards to gratitude. So since this is a compensation rewards venue that we're talking in today, let's start with the rewards topic. So here's my fundamental belief, and I've proven this in the organizations that I've worked with. We really have to take a step back, and we have to bust these myths, these beliefs we have about rewards. Now, in my performance management book, I have the 8 fatal flaws of performance management, and the 8th of them is we are not Pavlov's dog. We have a lot of beliefs around rewards, that if we ring that bell, we're going to jump all that much higher. This is not true. Pay for performance, and I always put quotes around it, pay for performance, as we see it executed in most organizations globally, is not delivering improved performance. And there's a number of reasons for that. One of them is this idea that extrinsic rewards drive sustained performance, that we are all motivated by that extrinsic reward. But that's not actually true. We're far more intrinsically rewarded. In fact, McKinsey just came out with data that said 67% of employees would trade their end-of-the-year bonus for more gratitude and recognition. We also believe that this pay for performance gets locked up in this small percentage of differences in merit pay. So what do? We take people through our performance cycle, we give them a rating, we put the rating in the machine. We're supposed to have a 5-point scale, but we really only use 2 points. And in those 2 points, we end up with minuscule amount of difference between the 4 and the 5, or the 3 and the 4. And then we tell our people, yes, we have pay for performance as differentiated pay. And I've been in these groups with employees, and they'll say, no, it's not. They know it's not. But we continue to believe that that's what we're doing. The other thing we love to do, particularly in the United States, is tie into this idea that an annual bonus has sustaining impact. That if I give you a nice big fat bonus at the end of the year, 6 months later, you're still juiced because of that bonus. Well, you're not. And in fact, I ask you oftentimes, if you go and quiz people on what their annual bonus was, they couldn't tell you. But if you ask them, when was the last time somebody really recognized you in a meaningful way? They can tell you that on the spot. They will give you the specific details, who it was, when it was, and what they were recognized for. So we also have this problem in this world of where we're trying to have more transparent pay, more equitable pay, that when we use merit-based models and we're trying to put performance drivers into base pay, we completely lose sight of the market. And so we no longer have very clean pay models that we can be very transparent with. It's very difficult for us to operate in that environment. So this is part of the problem we have, some of the myths, the rewards that we need to get rid of. So when I do this work, I always say, look, we need to do two things. We need to move away from pay for performance, in air quotes, and we need to move to this idea of pay for capability. You know, there were sessions I attended yesterday about skill-based pay and how we get really clear about what someone's work is worth in the market and how we pay for that. We can be much more transparent, we can be much more data-driven. And then reward for contribution. Pay for capability, reward for contribution. Now, to reward for contribution, there's several things we have to do. We have to be very clear about what contribution means here. We have to articulate that. We have to define it. And then we have to think about how we're going to reward for it. So last year I did a master session on this, and there's so much more here, but I'm going to just cover a few of the highlights. So if you're looking at a pay-for-contribution model, you really want to start to look at it in this way of individual, team, and organization. And then if you dive into the details that I've got here, and I'm still telling you, we're getting to gratitude, look at where gratitude and recognition show up. They're the heart of this model. If you want to start driving performance with money or without money, leaning into gratitude and recognition, micro-type rewards are the way to do it, because we can reward people in the moments. We can connect it to the goodness that they do. We can keep them fueled on a much more frequent basis to say, we see you, thank you, your impact is making a difference. Here's another way to look at it. If you take kind of that same framework and you say, okay, let's think about individual, team, and organization, where are the places that we're going to play? And I encourage you, if you're thinking about redesigning your rewards models, think about some of these frameworks. How do you start to think about how you create a diversity in the way that you pay that rewards people differently and far more frequently? Okay, so that was my little bit on rewards. So let's talk about feedback. My second book is on feedback. The reason we did a book on feedback is because, again, we figured we couldn't fix performance management, because every time we went and talked to executive teams and HR teams, they said, Tamra, your performance solution is great, but it relies on us being able to engage in a culture of feedback. We don't know how to do that. We're horrible at that. And so my colleague Laura and I wrote a book on it and said, okay, we need to help fix feedback. Initially, I thought we just need to get rid of the word. We need to eradicate this word feedback because it has such a bad brand. You know, if I walk up to you and say, hey, I've got some feedback for you, Kevin, you're like, okay, shields up. I'm preparing for that. But that's not what we need. We need feedback to be something that's completely different. And so we created a new definition for feedback, trying to create a movement to redefine feedback around the world, which says it's clear and specific information that's sought or extended with the sole intention of helping individuals or groups improve, grow, or advance. If we buy into this idea of feedback, we buy into this definition, we no longer need to label it. Constructive, negative, positive, blah, 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 blah. It's feedback if it's helping you go forward. If it's helping you solve a problem, something that's getting in your way, if it's helping you recognize a strength so you can go further. Once we lean into this, then we need to think about how do we fly it under the flags of fairness, focus, and frequency. And this ties us back to this idea of gratitude. Fairness, focus, and frequency. So here's my question for you. Is recognition, is gratitude feedback? Recognition is feedback. And it can be some of the most powerful feedback you can give someone. We tend to, because we are type A humans, think that the best thing we can do is tell somebody how to fix something that's broken. But actually, the best thing we can do is tell them how to lean into the strengths and the capabilities that they have. Sadly, many of us don't even know our core strengths. We don't know what it is our superpower, because maybe it's just something we're used to or we never thought about it. But if people help us see that, that's how we can go further. There's a reason why Buckingham and everybody else wrote books on strengths. They are powerful, and they are the most important way that we can change. So when we think about recognition, and particularly we think about it in the lens of feedback, If we bring more voices in, we include everybody in this process of feedback. We include everybody in this process of gratitude. That's how we drive fairness. If we create more frequency, and frequency is driven by sources, the more people who are involved, and the more frequently we do it from a time perspective, we drive more value and utility. This is a little chart from Gartner that shows if I get to about 7 or 8 sources of feedback, that value and utility is substantially higher. As you can see, it's almost a linear graph. And then when we talk about strengths, what we do and we recognize people for those things is we reinforce the good acts. We help them understand what their superpowers are. We help them unleash that potential we all talk about. So, that's my setup. We need rewards to change, and rewards needs to embrace gratitude and recognition. We need feedback to change, and we need feedback to embrace gratitude and recognition. So now let's talk about sort of a story of gratitude. How do we fuel people in performance? So I thought, I'm going to give you a bunch of numbers, but let's do it with a storyline. So this is May. So she works at level 11, and May is realizing that their top product, is plummeting in sales and market share. She's part of the product team. She's not a boss, but she's part of the product team, and she's very concerned about this. And because she lives in this culture of strong recognition, she's 33% more likely to be proactive, to take action. And she does. She decides she's going to solve this problem. And what does she do? She invites a diverse group of people in to help her solve it. And she brings them all in to join the conversation, and they're all excited to be there because they all live in this culture of recognition where they feel psychologically safe, where they know there isn't some hidden agenda here. I've been invited to participate because we're going to do some good work. Sean is the product team lead. That's who May works for. Sean is just thrilled that May is taking this on because he hasn't had the time to focus on it. He's had other things going on. And he, in a way that he often does, because he's a strong manager for giving recognition, he sends May a little love. He sends her an owning it recognition for taking the initiative to solve a problem. And it's interesting because when you look at this data, we know that employees that think they're going to be recognized, that operate in a culture of recognition, are almost 3 times more likely to be engaged. So if you saw the session this morning, we're talking about engagement. Gratitude and recognition is a superpower for driving engagement. We can really fuel it. It's one of the most significant drivers that we can do. So after they all gather together for the first meeting and May lays out what the problem is and everybody starts to think about it, Colin raises his hand and says, look, I'm going to put together an agenda for our next meeting. Colin goes away. He spends a bunch of time thinking about how do I really help the team get ideating, how do I bring the right data to the table, really goes the extra effort. And the group comes together and they have this killer meeting. They really start to understand, they really start to coalesce. And the team is super excited. In fact, they're so excited that 2 different people that participated in that meeting send Colin a little recognition. One, they send him for leaning in, going above and beyond to ensure a team's success, and secondly, for organizing and leading team building activities. So he's starting to get love from several people who participated in that. And interestingly, look at this data. 92% of workers are more likely to repeat an action after receiving recognition. So what's Colin going to do? He's going to lock that away. He's going to know that extra effort paid off. And I'm going to do that again next time around. And they're 18 times more likely to produce great work. So when people are engaged, when they feel recognized, when they're participating, they're bringing their whole selves, they're bringing their energy and their passion to the table. So also during that meeting, Monica was invited, and Monica is brand new to level 11. She, while she's only been there a few weeks, she has a really rich background, great instincts, a bunch of experience, which is why they brought her on board. So during the meeting, because she was new, Matt was very careful to pause the team at different times and make sure that Monica her voice was being heard, to bring her into the conversation, to make sure that she felt included. And that didn't go unnoticed either. And for that, May sent Matt a little recognition on inclusion, creating space where team members can feel heard, valued, and respected. Now, some of these statistics here, there's a ton, there's so much data in this space. I really had to be picky about what we put in here. But wellness impacts are so important. And my favorite on this sheet is 25% improvement in sleep quality. Is there anybody that doesn't want 25% improvement in sleep quality? I do. So there's a lot that we can do that really helps people feel better. And it's interesting, again, going back to this idea of frequency, the more frequently we recognize, the more well we feel. And there's charts that literally show sort of people's wellness and sort of serenity that is driven through recognition. So when the group met, the thing that they decided to do was they were going to break up, and they needed more data from customers. So they were going to have different team members call some of their most important customers to get their insights about what the problem was with this product. And so Jacob had agreed that he was going to call 5 clients, and he had set aside a day to do that. The morning he got up to do it, unfortunately, his daughter came down with a fever. His wife needed to go to work, so he decided he had to stay home and take care of his daughter. He put a call out to the team and said, "I'm so sorry. I was going to call these 5 clients today. I can't do it." And Matt said, "No problem. I got the space. I'll pick it up." Matt picked it up. He called the 5 clients for it. This didn't get unnoticed by Rebecca. She sent 2 gratitudes. She sent one to Jacob because she wanted to reinforce this idea of being open and transparent. So she sent him an authentically human recognition for showing vulnerability and openly sharing challenges or uncertainties. And then she sent one to Matt, just for being there and stepping in for Jacob when he needed it. Now, interesting, you see this, employees receiving weekly recognition have 27% lower absenteeism. They're going to show up more. They're going to show up more, they're going to be more engaged, and they're going to be more fulfilled in the work that they're doing. So the team comes back together, and they cross-reference all the data that they've received from the customers. They figure out what the problem is. They don't know what the solution is yet. That seems more elusive, more complex, but they've got the problem nailed. Now, Sean, head of product, he's so excited. He knows they don't have the solution yet, but he's just excited the team's identified the problem, they're moving forward. So he sends everybody in the team a recognition for thriving in an environment of uncertainty, for resilience, because they're powering through, they're keeping moving. And again, we see that these gratitude-rich environments increase motivation by 81%. That's a huge percentage, 81%. So Matt decides that he's going to pull Aaron together in a sub-team. They've all broken up into sub-teams to do brainstorming about the solution. They know the problem, what's the solution? Aaron's brand new to the team, he's just out of college, and Matt knows he's curious and wanting to learn, so he pulls Aaron in, and they have this great brainstorm. Aaron is so grateful because he learns a lot, and he sends a little recognition to Matt for helping him grow. But also, Matt benefits because he gets the benefit of these ideas and questions that Aaron brings, and it helps him think about more creative ideas for how he can solve the problem. So he comes back to the team with these ideas that are fueled by Aaron's questions. He throws out a solution that's completely innovative. Colin starts to build on it. They start to build on the idea. Monica says, "Wait a minute, I have an alternative approach." She presents her alternative approach. They talk about it. They, in the end, decide Matt and Colin's pathway is maybe a better pathway. They go that direction. And once this is all done, they figure out the solution. Now, there's a lot of recognition that flows after this, because there's recognition that Colin and Matt receive for embracing change and co-creating and partnering with others to create ideas. But there's also a little recognition that goes to Monica for advocating for and putting forward others' ideas, because she had put hers forward, and then she realized it was better to go with the direction Matt and Colin, and we wanted to recognize her for that. Now look at this number here. Organizations with social recognition see $1,737 productivity increase per employee. So if you have 15,000 employees, that's $26 million annually. $26 million annually for a tiny investment in recognition and appreciation. All right, so how's the story end? 3 months later, they've solved the problem. The product sales are going back up. Market share is going back up. They receive feedback from customers that they're so excited about how this has been solved. Fatima, the CEO, is just ecstatic. She sends the whole team recognition for delighting customers, solving a long-standing or pervasive customer issue, and the team is off and rolling. She celebrates that at a company event and recognizes the team. Now here again, you see that companies that spend 1% of their payroll on recognition have a 79% higher success rate in achieving their business goals. 79% higher chance of achieving your business goals. And again, with higher engaged employees, you're looking at 21% higher productivity. So the outcomes you can get by just simply investing in your people and building a culture of recognition are just so powerful. So if you look at it across engagement, productivity, innovation, retention, these are significantly different numbers from high culture of recognition companies to those who are not. The business case makes itself. And the interesting thing about this is you often don't have to invest anything more than you're investing today. It's about shifting that rewards portfolio to move more of your monies towards this micro rewards, recognition, and gratitude. So I don't care what door you want to come in, because we all have different passions. Maybe you come in the people and wellness door because you really want to create a healthier environment for your people. You come in the performance door for your people and teams, or you come in the profitability door for your organization. But here's the message I want to leave you with. Gratitude and recognition is not an expense. It may be the highest yielding investment you can make in your people, your performance, and your organization's success. And it's also, my little hope, your pathway towards a modern performance management, feedback, and recognition processes. So with that, I want to invite Gabi up to introduce Ultimate.
Thank you, Tamra. So let me make the bridge to how Tamra and I got to work together between, in our efforts here on the project called Ultimate. And I will explain how we got together. So our company, a company called Logic, we've been operating in the consumer loyalty space for the last 2 decades. And basically that world we know really well. And there's a lot of similarities when we look at what kind of incentives drive behavioral change when you deal with consumers. And we felt there was kind of a lot of parallels we wanted to bring and could bring to the employee motivation world, but we needed a scientific framework around that and work with, in this case, with Tamra. So if you look at what we do, we reward experiences in airline loyalty programs or bank loyalty programs, and then we give, on a global level, all kind of incentive choices to these consumers, and then drive a certain behavioral change with the programs that they're in. So to give you an idea, we work with large airline programs, Miles & More, or with Etihad Airways or Japan Airlines, or with banking loyalty programs like American Express, Membership Rewards, or in South Africa we work with, actually the word came up this morning, audacious came up, we work with a bank called African Bank, whose main mission is to help people around financial inclusion and on their way to basically be more responsible with their banking in there, certain clientele in there. And in fast-moving consumer goods, we work with the likes of Nescafé Dolce Gusto, run their loyalty program. And what our job is, to start with, is to deeply understand what is the DNA of that community, and then what are the behavioral changes that that particular brand wants to incentivize, and then basically come up with the right kind of incentive. So the DNA understanding of the community is very important, because a member in the African Bank program is very different from a member in the Etihad loyalty program. And in this room, you will have your own communities of your employees that you're dealing with, and what are the right incentives that will drive a behavioral change that you want to reward, linked to the topic of feedback and gratitude, as Tamra mentioned before. So in the consumer loyalty world, our clients define, let's say, a banking client. If somebody swipes their credit card 5 times in the first month of having that credit card, then we know we have that member on the way to become a loyal credit card holder and using that card even without thinking. So that's a particular trigger that they have defined where they want to incentivize with whatever the right incentive might be. What you saw Tamra presenting were a lot of triggers, but actually in the employee motivational space. But from a psychological perspective, we think they're quite similar in like how you can find the right incentive for the right behavioral kind of change. So what we've also learned is that usually kind of the particular gift that somebody wants to give who either runs a loyalty program or in an HR world, maybe the HR department. Very often it's kind of personally, there's a bias from whoever wants to give that gift. What would I like to give? And then probably that's also what I think the recipient will like to receive. We've seen that that's not the case. We think you need to give a very wide choice to people because they will want to find whatever is relevant for them in their life, in their passions. So what we basically do, we've got like, in our backend system, we got like more than 10 million products and gift cards and merchandise sitting in there. We like to curate that for the right audience and let then the employee or the member choose what he or she might think relevant. So we built kind of then a platform which can have products from Apple or Dyson or Montblanc, doesn't really matter. Or gift cards, can be of course Amazon gift cards, IKEA gift cards. It depends on the audience. So I gave the example of African Bank, which is a much more, they call it lower LSMs, lower income segment members in the South African market. That community is much more utility driven than other communities. So it basically means, please give me something where I can maybe fill up my gas in the car, or maybe top up my mobile phone credit, or maybe supermarket grocery gift cards, which is a very different gift that might be found in an American Express membership reward Centurion program, because it's a different audience. So long story short, we believe in like offering a very wide choice curated for that particular community, and then let the employee in this case find the right kind of gift for him or herself. So it can also be private label kind of content, can be using your gifts for flights or hotels or car rentals, or maybe converting it to your favorite airline loyalty currency. In the end, we as the representative of the companies helping them to give the right gift, we're almost like gift agnostic, because we think that the employee or the recipient should find something that is truly meaningful to them. Can also be experiences. Basically, you probably get the idea. Now, one parallel that we saw, and we discussed quite a bit between Tamra and myself, on where we saw a strong parallel, is that usually these people running the loyalty programs in companies, they struggle to get the attention of the boardroom, because basically the loyalty program is a marketing gimmick, and let's give it to the marketing team, and then we don't really know if it fully works. We hope, as the CEO or the CFO of that company, but basically they never could really embrace in the boardroom via a metric that kind of elevated it in terms of importance in the organization. And probably there's also some relevance in the HR world in there. You see all these statistics on like what is the impact of what we're doing, but to bundle it together in one metric, it's not that easy, that it basically gets fully embraced by the boardroom. So what the parallels that we've built with a group of trained actuaries in the consumer loyalty is we created a term called member equity, which is nothing more of than taking all the consumer data out of the database every month, and let's say that we would all be in one loyalty program here in this room. We would score every individual member on what is the predictive lifetime value for the next 5 years based on which products you've bought or cross-selling it. And so we calculate the expected future profit for every individual in this particular room. Then we aggregate that, and that sum of the collective expected future profits is then coined member equity, which basically means that the CEO and the CFO will have a view like, okay, my collective database of all these members is worth 1 billion euro this month. Next month we do the same. Maybe somebody now took out another home loan or different kind of products or whatever it might be. And now my database is worth 1.15 billion, for example, a month later. So you give a tool to the boardroom to also show the impact of what all these marketing activities are doing. Now, one of the journeys that we're starting on right now with Ultimate is like when we, and I'll explain how kind of our platform and concept works. Can we create over time a metric, bringing a lot of these kind of incentives and actions together in kind of perhaps a similar term, member equity, member in this case being the employee. Because like in a consumer loyalty world, the loyalty marketeer's job is, can they grow member equity over time? Because it's a shareholder value asset kind of approach. Similarly in the HR world, can we basically give the right incentives, the right gratitude that then drive these measurable results, but can we also bring it back to kind of a term? So that's kind of the journey we're on right now. And what we've done, basically, we've created a platform called Ultimate, which is like a motivational currency that companies can buy and then distribute to their employees for all kind of behaviors they want to incentivize. So we've got like a branded kind of approach in here where it's points as a service, where it's one platform to the world and one kind of currency in there. And then we have also discussions with larger organizations, and many of large organizations are in the room today, who say, look, we like all of what's in there, but it needs to be more my own currency name. I want a more curated version of the gifts and the contents in there, so that both those kind of models exist. So to basically bring alive then what we did together with Tamra, so we announced earlier this year that we know what we're good at, and we also know what we're not good at. We know consumer loyalty and the incentives and the global technology to deliver these rewards. We've probably delivered more than €1 billion of rewards in our lifetime in 180 countries. But what we do not know very well are these triggers in the motivational space linked to what kind of should be incentivized there. So I had the fortune to see Tamra speak at an event last year, and basically we started discussing after that, like, would it be possible to create a scientific framework with the 100 moments that matter, and you saw some of these moments already on Tamra's slide before, that we could enable to give to HR professionals that can be the 100 moments that drive all kind of these feedback and gratitude moments that matter in an understandable framework. So that's what we basically did, and Tamra curated and created this whole 100 moments that matter, so we call them the Moments by Tamra, and we then enabled that into our Ultimate platform. And so you see here like some of the themes in there, and I will show how that looks in our environment as well. So focus on teams, not individual heroes, advancing ideas, fueling growth, driving impact, elevating trust, and then you see all these little outside stars behind it. That's where these 100 moments kind of fit in. So what we then did, so imagine like as a company, you have an X number of stars that you have available in there. You can distribute them via all the various ways, either HR manager to employee, or manager to employee, or peer to peer. We're integrating it also with a lot of kind of daily work tools in there to make it easy, and also based on nudging, like maybe recognize that person for this or these kind of activities. So here you see the framework of Tamra's 100 moments, which we broke down in 25 categories, and every category has got 4 moments sitting in there. So Tamra already showed you some that were in the light brown kind of font in the slides before. So all these examples that Tamra was giving, you will find them built into that platform to give it a robust scientific framework on like how to do that. So in this particular case, you click on one of those kind of pillars, then basically you pick whatever moment it is that you want to recognize in there. In this case, basically you send it to the recipient. You can decide how valuable it is. Do you give like somebody 200 stars, 500 stars, 5,000 stars? You can also basically play with that element, of course, in there. And then it automatically creates like around that moment that matter, a creative execution that will go to the employee. That employee will receive thank you with the display of what the moment was that he or she would be recognized for. There can be a personal message to further kind of build on that by the person granting these kind of stars. And then when the employee gets it, that would then take them to a more global marketplace kind of store, where you will then be able to use these stars for whatever. If you're an employee in Brazil or in Korea or in South Africa or Germany, you will see whatever kind of content is relevant and enabled for that market and also for that particular community. So yeah, that basically kind of brings the story kind of together of like where Tamra basically her framework fits into what we've built. So thank you very much for your attention.